Ash, the last time the Timberwolves won a playoff series, I was a part-timer at KFAN radio in Minneapolis going to those games. They were facing the Kings and the Nuggets. That's 20 years ago. I believe you might have still been on the Star Tribune beat at that point, or you at least covered the team in that era. I mean, it has been forever since the Timberwolves were a relevant basketball team. But gosh, you watch them in that opening round game series against the Suns. You watch Anthony Edwards almost single-handedly close them out in Game 4. It seems like this is real. It seems like the way that they've put together that team, you talk roster construction and all the questions when they made the big trade for Rudy Gobert and how are he and Karl Anthony Towns going to coexist. It's working right now, and they've got some of the bright young stars in this league.
Yeah, no doubt. It's a fun story. I was on the beat back in 2004 when they won their only two playoff series and then got beat in the Western Conference Finals. Until 2 nights ago, I was the only Minneapolis beat writer who had ever covered that team and had seen them win a series. So I've suddenly got more company, and that's good. Things change. I mean, I think that Rudy Gobert trade was properly criticized last year because of, we got it, the period of adjustment and all, but whether you could make that work, in today's game. And the jury was out until this season, and they did make it work. So, kudos to them. They changed the narrative on that. They took a negative and made it into a positive. Karl Anthony Towns has accepted, and I'm not sure he had a ton of choice in this, but he accepted a role that's different from being the dominant, low post, offensive minded big. He's more of a complementary player now to open things up and to exploit some mismatches. Gobert's defense has proven real. There are a lot of Victor Wembanyama backers who want him to immediately get the Defensive Player of the Year award, and I don't see that happening. I think Rudy Gobert is going to win his fourth. His impact, his reputation dissuades a lot of guys from even going into the paint. And that's can be as effective as swatting a shot. So, and Anthony Edwards, I mean, he's taken step by step. I think he still needs, some maturity, but he's 22. He hasn't been as consistent. He certainly wasn't during the regular season. He didn't crack my MVP ballot because of that, but he's right on the fringes, 6th, 7th. He's got all the skills. And he's got, I think, the will and the personality to, be a real assassin out there. Great nature with media, and the Timberwolves. And this happened before Tim Connolly and the current regime, but they drafted him number 1, and it was a very prescient pick.
In classic T-Wolves fashion, there's always got to be some drama. I don't think many fans even have a concept of who actually owns the team at this point. I mean, you've been around long enough that you remember when Glenn Taylor rescued the Timberwolves. Harv and Marv were selling them down the river. They were going to move to New Orleans, and somehow Glenn ends up keeping them around. Now, this has happened several times where he's pulled the plug on a deal at certain points. This one with Mark Lowry and A-Rod seems so far down the road, and then all of a sudden there's this terse 2-paragraph statement of they blew it, they missed the deadline, I still own the team. Glenn, what makes him tick. How does this entire drama end?
I think ultimately, and now I know there's an arbitration process in place, and so that supposedly is going to have the final word. I still somehow can't see this getting resolved without intervention from the league. I do know Glenn. In fact, when he saved the Timberwolves from moving to New Orleans, he did it at just the right time because it looked like they were gone. I was covering that team. I went down to New Orleans to write several stories about the NBA returning to New Orleans, and I met my wife, the woman who would become my wife. And so instead of the team going all the way down the Mississippi, I brought her up the Mississippi to Minneapolis. And had that deal never been flirted with, or if it had gone through more smoothly, that wouldn't have happened. So, I do owe a debt of gratitude to that aborted transaction. This one, look, Glenn Taylor is an affable fellow. He comes across as this unexpected accidental billionaire from Mankato, Minnesota. He is a tough businessman, and I've got to think that he's got a fleet of attorneys that have combed through the documents and found loopholes that he believes will keep that team in his hands. I think it's driven by the change in the valuation of that team since that agreement was entered into. It's allegedly doubled in value, and he's locked into 2021 prices. And I think it's also related to the fact that the team's doing well now. And he has bankrolled that team for a long time, 20 years in between playoff series victories. And at 83, he wants to enjoy some of this. Now, why these guys, can't work out a deal between them, I don't know. I understand. I mean, it's high finance and it's above my pay grade. For a lot of us, I mean, it's just buy popcorn and see multimillionaires or billionaires going against multi-millionaires and billionaires. I don't have an emotional favorite in this thing. A deal's a deal, and yet there were clauses in there that there were certain deadlines that had to be met. I hear things on both sides. I don't think it's trickling down into the locker room or even the coaching ranks. I think that's so separate and for next season or beyond that it's not going to interfere with this postseason run. And then we'll see. I mean, we'll see in terms of what this team, based on where it finishes, has to do around the edges to improve, maybe go a step further. Maybe they won't have to go a step further. Maybe they'll be looking at defending and repeating.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.